help women save lives and peacefully end abortion where you live.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
You were serious about that?
Be inspired to change hearts and minds by joining over 1 million volunteers taking part in the global movement happening in your neighborhood.
She says, pray that I can get through this abortion. And I said, oh, no. So she went ahead and went into the abortion clinic. When she just came out, she told us, I'm not going to get the abortion. We just had a baby saved. So we had a baby saved in Memphis today. Praise the Lord.
This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. I'm Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live. And today, the topic is Planned Parenthood workers are in revolt. Woo! Sounds crazy. Sounds scary. So today, we will cover that important topic so that you can know if you outside of your house or in your neighborhood see Planned Parenthood workers in revolt, you will know what's going on. And it's because we are going to tell you. Somebody who has never revolted against anything is Mr. Steve Carlin, who joins me from Madison, Wisconsin.
I am indeed not a disgruntled employee. I am very highly gruntled.
You're in revolt of a lot of things. Actually, that was a lie.
I'm in compliance.
That's right. You're in
full
compliance. Yeah, that's right. That's why you were so. That's why you loved the COVID pandemic, because the government told you what to do and you did everything that they said.
They were looking out for our best interests and our safety.
I agree. And Fauci became godfather to one of your children. Is that correct?
Yeah. He. I entrust.
Oh, Uncle Fauci.
To him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tony.
Big T.
We just call him Tone.
Yeah, Tone.
What's up, Tone?
Tone. He always brings the broccoli casserole at Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And Ramona Trevino is with us as well. You are a Planned Parenthood worker in revolt.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm their worst nightmare.
Whoa. Yeah. You are like what George Washington was to King George. Just like a rebel.
Amen.
Yeah. It's great.
I'm still rebelling.
Yeah, well, we can't say that with the crazy division in our country. Can't have words like revolt or revolution. Okay, so let's start with this. Planned Parenthood workers over, 30, 40 years have been leaving. Okay, so the first, I guess, well-known conversion was Dr. Bernard Nathanson, who was an abortion doctor. He filmed an abortion that he was doing for educational purposes, ended up changing his life. He witnessed a baby die. It's called The Silent Scream. You can watch it on the internet if you want to. And it's very, very powerful. And then he was, an abortion doctor. He's the founder of NARAL. And then the workers start leaving. So it's not just an abortion doctor. It's Planned Parenthood, everybody, administrators. You were a manager. Why do you think that? So we get abortion in 1973. Nobody's really converting out of the abortion industry until Bernard Nathanson. I believe his conversion was 1981. Don't quote me on that. How come the further away we got from Roe, like we're supposed to get used to it, it's the law of the land, we're all, abortion is just part of our culture. How come the more abortion got instilled in our culture, the more the workers left?
Because I think the workers were beginning to open their eyes to see it was all a lie. The more that you reveal the truth to people, they have to, compare the truth to the lie. And then they realize, I've been living a lie. I've been sold a lie. Just like the women who choose abortions have been sold a lie. I think the workers also bought into a lie. And then they get in there and they realized, wait, something's not adding up here.
Can it become culture too? Like a culture of defectors? This is a big problem during the Cold War, is like you get one spy that leaves or other spies going to think of leaving. And that was the impact. Certainly your conversion, Carol Everett, who wrote a book when Abby left and wrote Unplanned. I'm sure the first people to buy Unplanned were Planned Parenthood workers. Jerry gave you a copy of Unplanned when you were working, our local 40 Days for Life leader. So all of a sudden it's like, oh, people do that. They leave.
And there's also people who leave that we never hear of leaving. Even within my own affiliate, there were people who left, and then you later realize there's an issue. It's not, I think sometimes it's not even about them having conversions. It's that they just realize Planned Parenthood is not a good place to work for,
Which is always our advantage. Go ahead.
We had a location, a 40 Days for Life vigil in Indiana, where the workers were just nasty to the pro-lifers, nasty to the 40 Days for Life volunteers. And then one day, like, one of the workers comes out and just like kind of cleverly standing where the surveillance camera is not going to see her, is like, keep praying for us. And within a month or two, every worker had turned over.
Amazing.
We counted, I think we were only able to confirm like that one was a documented conversion, but probably there were more. That's why when we talk about the saved babies, we say 25,000 that we know of. Right. The workers are also, there's a big that we know of, and that we know of is doing a lot of heavy lifting on that statistic.
Absolutely.
But you're starting with really a crappy atmosphere. I mean, it's depressing. It's an abortion facility, and it's not really anybody's goal, to be there. I feel like it has a negative tone. We certainly contribute to that if there's a 40 Days for Life outside. So you're already starting with a hostile kind of
environment.
What you actually do. And what I didn't know until I met a lot of the workers is just the whole, I really don't want anybody in the grocery store to ask me where I work, and just the social stigma that the evil Christians have created, clearly. But it's one of those things, it's the stigma of obviously just working there. But that all contributes, and I'm sure there are people that are great to work with and for at Planned Parenthood, But I'm sure there's also, just the misery that we've heard some of these workers of the people who are all in.
Yeah.
And but I want to ask you, with all of that, with that environment in mind, Planned Parenthood employees are now unionizing. That hasn't always been the case?
No, and I think it's really interesting. I think it's very telling, obviously, of what they're dealing with in Planned Parenthood. And I remember when I first came on board, there was a supervisor who was leaving, and she was trying to tell us, my coworker and I, we were both coming in as separate managers from two different facilities, and we were all three in the elevator together at the administrative office, and we were headed up, to probably fill out some paperwork or whatever, and she was the area supervisor, and she was quitting, and she was gonna let us in on something. But then her other coworker, the elevator stopped on a floor, and then the other coworker, and she saw her, and then she didn't fill us in on, or whatever it was. But you could tell.
You could feel
she was going to tell us something. She had us there alone in the elevator, and later I found out what it was is her response to the way they treated her when her mother passed away. And so I know it doesn't have anything to do necessarily with quote unquote clinical things and their working environment in terms of, why these workers are unionizing and their work conditions and things like that. But it speaks to the spirit, right? Like their conditions. It's not like working for 40 Days for Life where we have this really amazing environment. And, if we're going through something or grief or whatever, we know we're going to be supported. We know that, you're going to be understanding of each other and giving, time and charity to one another. It's not like that at Planned Parenthood, right? And so I think she was trying to let us in on something before, as we were coming on board. Like we were just starting out as these clinic managers, and so she was going to let us know about it, and we never got a chance. But then we realized, there was something there, and she was wanting to share with us. And so if that's happening just at the administrative level, where they're not actually quote unquote working, day in and day out, I can only imagine what it's like for these employees who now feel they have to unionize in order to be treated better.
Before we get to California, so if I'm a manager or an executive Planned Parenthood, I say, no, but come on. I mean, we have grieving leave or whatever, grief leave, and it was 3 days, and this employee didn't think it was long enough, and of course losing your mom's hard, and she kind of took that out on us, and now she's making us to be the bad guy. That happens in every company. But what doesn't happen in every company, that happens a lot in Planned Parenthood, is they go after their own former employees or their current ones sometimes, as happened with Myra Rodriguez, the former Planned Parenthood manager. And that you just don't hear that a lot. You hear some lady gets fired from Ford or whatever, and she sues, and they all work it out. But you don't hear of like Ford firing somebody and then suing them.
Right.
And that's happening a lot with Planned Parenthood.
I think they're terrified of their employees. You know, we have all of these former employees who have left, and you know, I think they're not just afraid of those who have conversions. You know, obviously, if we have conversions, we're going to speak out. But I think they're also afraid of those who have been mistreated as employees, who were actual abortion supporters, because they're going to be like, oh, now this person's going to.
And even little like
blow the whistle and just expose us.
The typical employment stuff. I never got a raise. I stayed late. No one ever said thank you. I didn't get Sally got a wine basket at Christmas. I didn't get squat. You know, that kind of stuff starts to add up when you're like, hey, that lady ran the POC lab. Like, she kind of knows what we did here.
Or even, for an example, you know, someone who's bilingual and who's doing double or triple the work of other people because there's not enough staff to help that one person. You know, I saw that in my former workplace as well, you know, and so you have that caseload, right? You have more of a workload than other people do because you're running around, not just doing your job, but you're also running around as a translator. So there's all of these different scenarios that come into play, and they just have total disregard for their employees.
Well, you've had to do that for 40 Days for Life when we were in Mexico together. So that hasn't really.
I want to raise, Sean.
Yeah, no,
I want to raise.
That hasn't registered that you're like, that actually, no, I do run around as a translator because Sean barely speaks English. He definitely doesn't speak Spanish.
I want a bilingual raise.
That's right, the bilingual raise, because mi habla español es muy malo. Okay, so in California, Planned Parenthood executives are glad that it became an abortion sanctuary state. But I would have never thought about this, right? Because Roe's overturned, Trump's evil. Thank God I work at Planned Parenthood in California. Woo! Hear us roar. But it's kind of like, well, now we're going to have a lot more work. Remember when George Costanza was going to get the promotion to Morgan's job at the New York Yankees? He was like, I don't want Morgan's job. He's got a lot of work to do. And that's kind of what's happened in California.
Yeah, we've got a great quote here from Mia Newstein, who said the flow of out-of-state abortion clients has created stress for her and for her colleagues. She says, the types of working conditions that we've been dealing with, especially in the last year or so, have really pushed people toward realizing how necessary a union is. So
that's a double-edged sword. Here's another quote. The Planned Parenthood employees who voted to join the union last week said they believe they are underpaid and overworked, contributing to turnover.
And that's from the Calexico Chronicle. So this has hit the press now. This isn't just like a little bit of like, oh, somebody's complaining on social media. This is making the news.
Mm-hmm.
But this goes back to our point, which is it doesn't, of course it matters, but it's limited. It doesn't matter with elections or TV commercials about 14-year-old rape victims can't get abortions, or, all politicians who are pro-life will lose, elections. All of that rhetoric that goes on in a post-Roe America, some people regretting that Roe was overturned, it boils down to hearts and minds at the local level. And if you can close an abortion facility, then it doesn't matter if California has abortion at 40 weeks. If you can't operate, and you can't operate without employees. And we have been kind of ringing the bell for a while on turnover at Planned Parenthood, on the shortage of abortion doctors. Now, sadly, we are starting to see some young ones come up. But overall, there's a huge shortage of abortion doctors. And that impacts them. And you can't have, turnover anywhere is a bottom line killer. And this is really bad. And this is California. They should be paying these people really, really well if business is up, and they're clearly not.
This is something we're seeing all over the place. In fact, so much that I can kind of identify patterns when local leaders ask, what's going on at my local Planned Parenthood? They say they're temporarily closed. They'll be open again next month, or they'll be open again in 6 weeks. Like, are they going to go out of business? Why is this a temporary closure? And I've seen this happen enough where I can now say, well, I don't know for sure, but I suspect that in many cases we've seen this be the case where they just don't have the staff, so they can't open. And then, lo and behold, the local 40 Days for Life leaders start sniffing around, and they find, they've got an ad for a nurse practitioner and a doctor and a receptionist and a medical director. And gosh, you're right. They can't keep the doors open. It's not going out of business permanently, but we have seen over and over and over again, just in the last 3 to 5 years, Planned Parenthood locations that are closed for a day, for a week, for a month, sometimes more than half of the year. Solely because, and it's always disappointing when they do reopen, if they do reopen, but that's a victory. If you can keep that place closed any day that they're not killing babies, that's a victory. And certainly if they're going months in between being open, that is a huge victory.
Do we have any data on Planned Parenthoods in abortion-free states or where it's highly regulated, where they've just fired people or lost staff because they don't have the revenue?
I don't have data on that. It's been they always seem to me to be trying to hide it a little bit. I don't know. Maybe Ramona has some insights on that. As far as I can tell, there's we don't have the 2023 annual report, do we? I don't think it's out yet.
No,
there's always a significant delay.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that appears to be going on is I think they're trying to see how long they can wait it out. Can they get in some of these pro-abortion states or states that are maybe even pro-life, can they get the referendum passed that brings abortion back to their states? Can they get a new election where you get a new governor and suddenly their funding is back? I get the feel, I don't have proof of this, but I get a strong sense that in a lot of the pro-life states, they're just trying to hang on and hope that something rushes in, saves the day, and changes their fortunes. What do you think, Ramona?
Oh, I agree. It's interesting. We don't have the data. We don't know if it is. I know, like, for example, there was a location in Texas, in Denton, where they were seeing that they were closing certain business hours, and so we don't know if it is because of turnover or if it is because of lack of money. So it's just kind of hard to tell right now in states where abortion is outlawed.
Yeah, and the annual report I reference is obviously Planned Parenthood's annual report, and all we have now is 2022, which is only, 6 months of Roe being overturned, so it's not super helpful. But 2023, I think, will tell us a lot.
They issued that weird annual report where we couldn't quite tell. Some of the data is from before Roe, some of it's after, and so I don't know when exactly to expect the next one because they're off of their schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Planned Parenthood's holding their breath. I think they're just holding their breath, wait and see what happens kind of situation where they don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, but there's two things that they have going for them. Tax funding's up, way up, $750 million, and donations have to be up. That's my gut feeling. We don't know that yet, but
we've seen. For pro-abortion organizations across the board, they went way up right after Roe was overturned. Right. But now we see some of those abortion funds that pay for the travel, they've dropped. I think you get that initial spike where it goes way up, and then things kind of start settling back to normal. And so they're not raking in as much cash as they were in July of 2022, that's for sure.
Well, and they're not getting like the general population donations either. So you're just looking at big, giant lump sums too, like
the Melinda Gates stuff.
Yep. So it's not like they're getting huge support from all over people and donors from across the country.
Did you have to do a lot of fundraising?
I did not. I did not.
You didn't?
No.
Okay. They just do that for you?
I don't know where we never knew that side of the business.
I guess because if you're running your clinic, your CEO of Planned Parenthood North Texas, they do all
they do all that. Yep.
They do all of that. Because that would be interesting. Like, that person right now in North Texas, what's the pitch? Like, we're holding out to get evil Texas, reinstated in, modern society, and we're going to have abortion again, so just keep sending us money?
My question is, like, where is the money coming? Like, there's obviously a flow coming in from somewhere. And where's the benefit of keeping them open in places like Texas? Because obviously we have campaigns in Texas, right? We have 40 Days for Life campaigns still in Texas. And my question is always, where's the money coming from, and what services are being provided that is bringing in the money? That's the question I have, because when I was working for Planned Parenthood, so much of our affiliate, like the majority of our affiliate, the centers in our affiliate, were working in the red. They were all in the red. No one was working in the black. And so if it was like that 13 years ago, obviously it still continued to be that way with or without abortion. And so now you don't have abortion. So my question is, what is keeping them going?
I have a few theories. Like if I was running Planned Parenthood in Texas, which I would obviously never do, but from a business standpoint, I would raise a fortune off of evil Trump and evil Abbott. So that's a big part of it. And it's just reactionary. People, a hurricane hits and people just send money. Americans are very generous particularly when tragedy strikes, which they would see abortion ending in Texas as tragedy striking. The other thing that, even though they're in the red, is I bet you, particularly in Houston, to keep the game going long enough, because they have a lot of real estate and most of it's paid for, they're probably borrowing against their real estate. You fire some people, so you have low overhead. You're not open as much. You're nonprofit. They're not paying real estate taxes on all these properties. And unless they set it up in a way, they may pay real estate taxes, but they can just borrow against their property. I mean, the Planned Parenthood in Houston, which is the largest in the world, they bought for $14 million in 2006. 2006, essentially 20 years ago. Texas business real estate in Houston in the last 20 years. It's going to be a 30 or 40 million dollar property that they have 5 people working in there. So to me, they can because at first I said, and I was wrong, they're going to start dumping real estate in a year after Roe's overturned, and they really didn't. And I think they're either borrowing against it. They don't have the cash flow, as you pointed out.
No, they don't.
They don't have the cash flow. So they're probably just trying to get this Hail Mary, and we're in the Hail Mary stage.
And in some cases, they're not holding out. Something that I never saw coming is we have seen just a rash of blue state abortion facility closures, including Planned Parenthood facilities. New York is shutting down numerous Planned Parenthood locations, citing unfavorable political and financial conditions.
Well, New Yorkers are very pro-life and conservative.
It's crazy. So there was a really good New York Times article about this late this summer, and they were taking a look at it, and there were a variety of different factors that were mentioned, but they said inflation is up, which we all know. Inflation is up, so Planned Parenthood's expenses are up, and yet their clients' ability to pay more for the services is not going up. And so this is, if true, put some stress on the industry, and that's why we're seeing New York and Pennsylvania and other states where you would never think, it's an abortion sanctuary state. Everyone's going to be going there for abortions, and yet they're closing down because of, quote, unfavorable political and financial conditions.
They've also got to be making a fortune where they can do it legally on abortion pills. I mean, that's just, as Sonny said from The Godfather, there's a lot of money in that white powder. And those things are just cash cows, as you know.
The expenses are going up. California is not the only state that's unionizing. Oregon saw abortion unionize, and that led to a 15% increase in annual raises, paid employee insurance premium coverage, matching retirement contributions. This is an interesting comment to me. I don't know how much I should read into this or not, but a Planned Parenthood employee named Lindsay said, when the employees are taken care of and really supported, they give better patient care.
And when we're not, we don't.
As we've talked about so far, and we'll continue to talk about, obviously, a lot of these Planned Parenthood employees do not feel taken care of and supported. So what are you getting? what are you getting when you go to Planned Parenthood?
The nurses have a case of the Mondays. It's really, they're all mad about their compensation. This is my favorite, especially for what we do. Every 40 Days for Life volunteer should laugh at this. This is great. Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska unionized Planned Parenthood employees in those states picketed their own facilities to demand contracts with higher compensation and to draw attention to intimidation and unfair labor practices. They joined 40 Days for Life.
That is one sentence that you just read.
I love it.
And it just builds upon itself so beautifully.
Oh.
Every clause is more. They unionized. Okay, that sounds pretty serious.
That's
They
crazy.
picketed their own facilities. They wanted more money to draw intimidation to intimidation and unfair labor. That sounds pretty bad to me.
Yeah, I don't know what any of that means, but it sounds pretty bad. Yeah, it's great. I love it. I love it because anytime you have Planned Parenthood employees picketed their own facilities.
Well, I find it interesting, this intimidation line, to draw attention to intimidation
Yes, could you elaborate?
and
on that,
unfair
please?
labor
how
practices.
do
The
you
unfair
have-
labor practices I can understand because,
Yeah.
anyone that's been employed anywhere has
Right.
experienced probably unfair labor practices. But I wonder
Unless you work here.
exactly. But the intimidation, I find that very interesting. But again,
But how do you intimidate people when you have a turnover problem? Aren't you kind of like, hey guys, we're having cake. Why are we having cake today? It's Tuesday. You're all doing a great job. But they're not doing that. They're intimidate. Now this could all be BS too. They're like, we feel intimidated.
well,
Either way, good
but,
for
but,
us.
But here's like another example.
Popcorn ready.
We had a leader in Arkansas they were speaking with a manager whose little girl was having surgery. And part of that intimidation obviously was you got to get back to work. You can't be off. She's a single mom. Like all the stories I always hear that are horrible about
She
how
should
the
have never
employees-
had her daughter.
Yeah, about the employees who are being treated unfairly and badly are always situations in where these women are single mothers and have to take time off for whatever reason. Usually, if family member, they're taking care of somebody, a kid is sick, having surgery, whatever the case may be. But there always seems to be this pattern of employees being mistreated when they're single mothers, which is ironic, right? Because you would think that Planned Parenthood would be trying to empower. Like these women, I think, go into Planned Parenthood thinking, this is where I can be seen as a woman. This is where I can be valued as a woman. And if I choose to have a baby, because remember, it's my right to choose, right? And if I am a mother and I'm a single mother, if anywhere I go to work, if I should be treated fairly anywhere as a single mother where people
Definitely
will
Planned Parenthood.
understand, my plight as a single mother, it should be Planned Parenthood, right? And it's the complete and total opposite.
Well, Planned Parenthood is a progressive organization that seems to support every progressive cause, which we saw after Roe was overturned. They didn't even talk about Roe or abortion or anything. It was every leftist cause under the sun. So all of that is to say, surely they will welcome the unionization of their employees with open arms, right?
I'm shocked that they weren't already unionized. That's what I can't get over. Okay, so just a little recap to show what a dire problem this is for Planned Parenthood. So we had California. This is just states where abortion celebrated. California, Oregon, Minnesota, which is crazy, Iowa, which is fairly pro-abortion. Now Massachusetts. This is getting dark. Okay. So the Planned Parenthood of Massachusetts says unionization leads to worse care for customers. Isn't that great? But they didn't say clients.
So
or patients.
Lindsay says that the employees provide better care when they're supported and they unionize.
But Jennifer, Planned Parenthood League of Massachusetts, Jennifer Childs Roshak, I think I'm saying that right. I hope employees will vote no to union representation because the union would make the organization less flexible. Ooh, that's not going to age well.
And also, she said they don't really need to unionize because they offer free parking
Free parking, Steve. Get over it.
to, quote, increase equity for frontline staff, end quote.
And if you work at 40 Days for Life, we got free parking. Everybody shut up. We got free parking. What do you want?
You can't
Oh
make this
my
up.
I get a
This
free
sounds like-
pullover, Sean.
Yeah, you got a fleece and
This-
a jacket.
Sounds like Matt Walsh and I are racist. We're going to increase equity by giving out free parking. Equity.
Our motto of care, no matter what, should apply to both patients and staff alike. Man, this is gold. You really pointed this out to us because I didn't know that. I thought, they got a few affiliates where some disgruntled. But when you start unionizing in Massachusetts and Minnesota and California, you're starting to the wheels are coming off, and it should be high tide. They should be ecstatic that, all of especially in those states, that they are like, water in the desert of America since Roe fell, and we are here. And I'm really surprised, just on a practical level, and this obviously isn't the case. In theory, everybody is traveling to get abortions, and that one lady cited that. More people are traveling. We know everybody's not traveling. This is one of the big myths that we put in What to Say When, too. Is the airports are so packed because all the women are flying to California to get abortions. Some are traveling, but we'll find out in the annual report. But the blip of overall, like how many surgical abortions went up or went down, we don't know that yet. But in theory, if they were traveling, Planned Parenthood would be paying people more. It would be like the best time to work there, and they'd be hiring people, and they'd be like, "Look, we pay well. Go work somewhere else. Yeah. We give you free parking. Shut your trap," and that's just not happening.
And it's always been this way. I mean, I've been out of Planned Parenthood for 13 years now.
So if you read this, let's say you got in a time machine and you read this today, and we didn't tell you that Roe was overturned, you'd be like, "Oh yeah, nothing's really changed." And we're like, "Roe fell," and you're like, "Oh, wow."
Yeah, nothing's changed. I mean, we were a small staff of 3, and we were overworked, and I kept begging for another staff member. We were a staff of 3, and we saw as many patients as some of the larger facilities that had like triple the staff. We saw as many, if not more, with one nurse, one medical assistant, and myself.
Did you ask for raises?
I asked. Well, we didn't have an opportunity to ask for a raise. We were just told we weren't getting one.
But did they do?
They did. We didn't even get a chance to ask for a raise. It was just like flat out start the new year and hey, by the way, no one's getting raises.
Did they do annual reviews?
Yes.
Okay, and that was when your raise was rejected, or when you were told you're not getting a raise?
We were told in meetings before we even had the opportunity to ask for raises.
Not getting a raise.
No one's getting a raise. Yes.
Did you get the subscription to, what was it, the
Jelly of the Month Club? Clark, that's the gift that keeps on giving all year long.
But I was going to put in a swimming pool this summer, guys. No.
And if there's enough room, if there's enough left, I'm going to fly you all down to Dedicated. I can't swim, Clark. I know that, Eddie. Sorry, I'll keep going.
Yeah, no,
I'll stop.
No, it was insane because I begged for another medical assistant. We couldn't do it. Our nurse was complaining all the time because our schedule was packed. I was a good manager. I packed our schedule and we saw a lot of people, right? And we were doing very well. But this isn't anything new. I mean, I can totally empathize with what these workers like. I'm having flashbacks. I'm like, yeah, I remember staying late and trying to finish up the day and just being by myself because I'm telling my staff, go ahead and go home.
But you were in North Texas, a conservative part.
Very conservative.
Not like Dallas, but you were in a very conservative part. And so they're like, look, hey, we're trying to survive. Quit asking for a raise. Like, we're in Texas. We don't have the donors. We got evil Republicans. We got, get over it. This is Massachusetts. And here's the union executive vice president. This is gold. All workers deserve the right to make an informed decision on their own about whether to form a union, free from intimidation and in a non-coercive environment.
There's that word again. Intimidation keeps coming up.
I thought we were the intimidators. 40 days of harassment.
Speaking of intimidation.
That's funny.
This is fun. Like, the unionization is fun. The management telling them don't unionize is fun. Now we're going to get to some really fun stuff of the retaliation against the employees who speak up.
Yeah, shut them up, baby. All right, so Planned Parenthood employees claim that the abortion giant penalizes workers who speak up. We've never heard this before. Okay, this Planned Parenthood employee, Shay Gingras from Minnesota, says that she was retaliated against for her role on a bargaining team. She said, I felt betrayed, attacked, and undervalued. I feel as if I am being punished for this work. I call on Planned Parenthood of whatever that is, northern Minnesota, to stop the evident union busting. She's a Planned Parenthood nurse? Or no, the nurse is next.
Yeah, the nurse, Nicole. Not a lot of people make it to the 1-year mark in this organization. Without significant changes in how we are treated, our department will continue to be a revolving door with passionate individuals arriving full of hope and potential, only to be worn down within a short period.
I love it. That is so awesome.
Oh, let's keep this going. We're actively voicing our concerns about disregard for staff outside of the Twin Cities metro area, disorganized management, security concerns, and the mishandling of important communications. We demand that our leadership be held accountable for abandoning the mission when it becomes inconvenient for them.
See, and we're having fun with this because this is like popcorn. But the even if it was the best place to work and everybody was paid well and they had better benefits and health care and everything, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's still horrible, right? Because it's an abortion facility. But the reason this is important is not because we like when they're all like turning on each other, but it's because in a post-Roe America, this is the kind of stuff that closes local abortion facilities. You can't have this stuff. It closes tons of businesses, but you can't have this. This is basically like a Taco Bell where you work there for a year and you leave. I mean, that's insane, particularly for, quote, a medical establishment. You just never hear that. I mean, when my father-in-law had an OBGYN practice for 35 years, and it was just like losing a nurse, I mean, he had very little turnover, but it's like a huge deal because you got to replace them and, all of that. That's why medicine pays. There's a huge shortage of doctors and nurses. And they're bragging about their free parking, but treating their people like crap.
This goes even further because everything so far has been largely, intimidation, it's nebulous. We don't know exactly what that means, and we're fighting over raises and stuff like that. Here's Planned Parenthood nurse Grace Larson, who said, Planned Parenthood terminated me for sending a whistleblower email to a third-party organization alerting them to an accused abuser within our organization, as well as theirs. And she added that this accused abuser had a role in training and education of healthy relationships and education to children.
See, what you can't have that becoming public.
No.
I mean, all of this, like the fact that we know about it, otherwise we'd just be sitting there going, Planned Parenthood does abortions. It's controversial. It's probably not a very healthy work environment, but that's just pro-lifers versus pro-abortion folks. That's irrelevant. But when it becomes public, you're really like, this is like really, really bad. And imagine if the shoe were on the other foot. Can you imagine? If we had people leaving pro-life organizations saying there was a predator and I was intimidated and Steve got free parking, but I didn't, and all that kind of stuff. And
I have more equity because of my free parking.
Steve intimidated me after the Cowboys lost to the Packers in the playoff game. I'd like to file that report.
Your intimidation of me,
the Packers' victory, I should say.
It was you intimidated me by I didn't back into the free parking. I pulled into the free parking. You're a big back into your parking spot guy, and I felt like I was being, I don't know, othered. You were
othered. I was like, not everybody knows how to operate cars who live in cold places that start with W. Okay, so we got the predator running around, and that lady was terminated. And not the predator
the predator was not terminated.
Arnold took out in the late 80s. This is like the worse than the predator. Much worse than the alien.
The whistleblower.
That's also what happened to Myra Rodriguez, who we talked about before, right? She's like, hey, I think the abortionist left the baby's head in this woman. No, she didn't. Yeah, you better go check. And then that's kind of the beginning of the end.
That was the beginning of the end for her. She managed Planned Parenthood in Arizona, but what's crazy with her story sounds like she's textbook disgruntled, making up stories. They go to court and they win. They're very good at that, and they're very selective about when they do this, which was an embarrassment when we beat them in court, when Abby left. They should have never let it get to that point. And certainly with Myra, suing Planned Parenthood and actually winning, it was crazy. It was awesome. Okay. Mistreating employees is nothing new for Planned Parenthood. Okay, here we go. This is like, I would have said this in a speech when I was like 21 or something. And
The
people,
least surprising thing that we can say on this podcast.
right. And you're just like, this is not true. You're just an idiot young pro-lifer. Planned Parenthood doesn't want pregnant employees. Okay. They support abortion. You don't. Now you're just going in crazy land. However, the New York Times, one of the great pro-life establishments in America, Planned Parenthood employees in Texas, North Carolina, and New York accused the abortion giant of not hiring pregnant job candidates, refusing pregnant mothers' requests for breaks, including when they had a medical necessity, and pushing women out of Planned Parenthood after giving birth.
Sounds like something we would have written.
Abby lived through this. Did you have a baby while you were working at Planned Parenthood?
I did not.
You did not. Okay. So
I mean, I wasn't pregnant.
right, you weren't
Right.
pregnant and had leave and all that. Okay. So yeah, Abby said that because she had a baby. They're like, okay, well, this is going to change things. Then she got pregnant again. It's like, okay, you're crazy. Most Planned Parenthood offices do not provide paid maternity leave, though many allow them to use short-term disability. So this is where, on other fronts, okay, I'm going to try to defend Planned Parenthood somehow. Like, I don't understand this. On other fronts, they're so good at marketing and making themselves look not evil. So if you know all the abortion's only 3%, you know all that crap. That's total BS. You know, dang, man, we do 350,000 abortions a year. This is our bread and butter. This is who we are. On the public, we do cancer screenings and we're the nice guys. Give your people maternity leave. I mean, it's just a good talking point, if nothing else. It's just shocking that they are going cheap with these things that people would naturally, you do abortion, so I'm sure you hate your pregnant employees. Well, yeah, of course. But actually, you're supposed to do the opposite to like overcorrect it.
Yeah.
And
this is like Smith & Wesson having a sign that says gun safety is not important here.
Well, I just had a flashback. I remember, I think it was for Mother's Day, they had this little campaign in our affiliate of asking for donations for Mother's Day. Like, it was a big, cardboard box. And it was, let's bring in donations. We're going to take them to the women's shelter, because we want the public to think that we love mothers. And it was kind of all this little chuckle in the whole room.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there thinking, why did she just say that out loud?
But it's smart. It's smart. We're going to do
PR.
We support women. We support mothers. They think we're all about abortion. We're not, and it's smart. But when you don't offer maternity leave, I don't know of a lot of medical places that don't do that.
And so what do they offer? To me, this is telling. What do they offer in place? Well, we don't have maternity leave, but you can use your generous PTO. No, you can go on disability. Mm-hmm. Pregnancy is a disability.
Yep. Oh, that's the cherry on top is you're disabled because, you're having a baby.
Like, can you imagine one employee started an online fundraiser to help pay her bills while on unpaid maternity leave like that?
There's like 1,000 things. This is a great podcast. There's like 1,000 things that are shocking in this. And we haven't even addressed the fact that this isn't like Sean Hannity reporting this. This is the New York Times. So the New York Times continues. Good for you, New York Times. In Miami, one current and two former employees said that women at a Planned Parenthood office were scared to tell their managers they were pregnant. Quote, it was looked down upon if you got pregnant.
So if we're doing like the word cloud here, we got intimidation, scared, abuser.
Looked down upon. Wow. It's not just Planned Parenthood's past that's rooted in racism. Former Planned Parenthood director Nicole Moore sued her former employer for
We got a list here.
A, constant humiliation, B, excessive workloads, and C, punishment for bringing attention to racism at Planned Parenthood.
Quote, while Planned Parenthood has publicly boasted its commitment to racial equality, the organization has blatantly ignored reports by dozens of its black employees of systemic unequal hiring and promotion, more work for lower pay, overt hostility, and trafficking in stereotypes by leadership.
You're waiting for like the HR
It's
director.
almost as if their founder was racist.
You stole my line.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. You beat me to it. I was gonna say, I was like, the next line is the HR director going, "We're founded by a racist, bro. Sell that craziness to someplace else." I love it. This is like, it is. It's just Margaret Sanger wanted to eliminate the Negro population. Okay, so doing the experiments on the Puerto Rican women, she wasn't a fan of the black and brown. So now that you're calling them racist, they can kind of be like, hey, come on, you know.
And this isn't just Nicole here. This is Nicole's direct supervisor also sued Planned Parenthood, in this case for anti-Semitic discrimination. And in fact, at least 24 Planned Parenthood employees across the country have filed discrimination lawsuits.
What race was Nicole? Is that her name?
I believe she's black.
She's black. Okay,
So her boss is Jewish, and he was also discriminated against.
Okay, so we're going against the blacks and the Jews at this Planned Parenthood.
That's according to the complaints.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Two dozen Planned Parenthood employees across the country. That's
Well, that's
pretty-
real. Well, then
yeah,
it's real.
yeah.
Like, I mean, that's like the.
it's not like a one-off.
No,
You know what I mean?
it's
These
a
are
Systemic.
It's who is the dirtbag Harvey Weinstein. Like one actress comes out and they're like, you didn't get the part that you wanted, and then 30 come out and you're like, okay, he kind of looks like a scumbag. We'll look into it, and then it's like not 30, it's like 300 or whatever. So that's the problem, is that this is happening. But I want to point out to the listeners, which is great, again, in a post-Roe world, that it's happening in diverse parts of our country. This isn't like everybody in Alabama knew all the clinics were going to close because they have an abortion ban and they all got together and tried to sue and get their pile before they got canned. That's not what that would make sense, where you're like, all right, that's, you know. But this is New York, Massachusetts, California, with, by the way, the New York Times reporting on it. Okay, here we go. Let's go to Texas. Employees at Planned Parenthood of Greater Texas publicized complaints of working in moldy facilities that caused health problems, overwork, racism, and disability discrimination. This is actually where it's kind of funny, because you create, this is the woke issue. When you create like everybody's a victim, it's like the moldy facilities caused health problems. I can believe that. Overwork. Okay, maybe you had to clean up the mold. And racism. You know, the mold made people racist or whatever. So they're just like piling on. One staffer was told she was only hired because she was a racial minority.
Maybe that's like Planned Parenthood's response. You don't like when we're racist against you? We don't like when you're racist for you.
We hired you. You're black. Get over it. This is actually the most believable thing on this whole thing, of like, we hired you because you're a minority.
I know for a fact I was a DEI hire for Planned
Before
Parenthood.
DEI was popular.
Exactly. Yeah. It was really evident that we all were DEI hires. And then I ended up being a very successful clinic director, and then they were like, uh-oh, we hired the wrong lady.
Hire you for the DEI, stay for the competence.
Exactly.
Did you work with any white people?
Our nurse practitioner.
As we learned in Am I a Racist? It's like, what is a diverse person? Anybody but white. And he said, what if you're gay? Oh, gosh.
I noticed that only the nurse practitioners were white. Everyone else pretty much was a minority. I'd never worked anywhere where there were so many minorities in those types of positions. Like our area supervisors, our, clinic managers. I hate using the word clinic, but that's the title. They were all minorities. And I'm looking around thinking, this is interesting, from my perspective, right? And then you receive emails from some of these women, and you're thinking to yourself, how did this person get hired for this position? Just for basic grammar.
If you could go back, would you mess with them and be like, I'm Scottish?
It would be so cool if I could go back and infiltrate Planned Parenthood
from
under
London.
the radar.
I grew up in Frankfurt.
Oh,
my
if only I
gosh.
had a time machine, Sean. Things
I
would
know.
be different.
Yeah, my last name's O'Malley.
We got some silly stuff here.
All right, here we go. Of course, Steve Carlin. Let's talk about COVID all day. Another team member was placed on unpaid leave because she's hard of hearing and could not compensate by reading coworkers' lips due to the COVID mask. This is gold. So she's a lip reader, which we know is a thing from Seinfeld. And because of the COVID mask, which Planned Parenthood was making everybody wear, she couldn't read lips.
Unpaid leave. Goodbye.
Yet another now instructs her friends not to donate to Planned Parenthood and used a key to scrape the Planned Parenthood bumper sticker off of her car.
The visual on this is fantastic.
Now this is like the senior girls fighting over the quarterback in high school. Where you're like, he's my man. They're just like pissed at each other. Like it's okay. We're enjoying the popcorn, but now there's peanut M&Ms on the popcorn because this is gold. Okay, we're almost done. Former Planned Parenthood advocates of Indiana and Kentucky employee Angela Brown sued when she was denied medical leave to deal with her cervical cancer diagnosis. There's a lot there. Obviously, the cancer part. She's a woman. Like you're for women's health care.
We need abortion for cervical cancer, but if you have cervical cancer, also screw you.
But they're also the champion of being able to screen women for cervical cancer, right?
And all this is just a sampling, by the way. But I mean, here's the serious part of it. So if you're the CEOs and the certainly all their general counsels, I mean, with all of this, they're not with their internal lawyers. They're not able to handle this volume. And when you get into discriminatory employment law and all that kind of stuff into the weeds, all these affiliates have a general counsel, right? But they don't have 10 lawyers that work for them. And just when they came after Abby, when they came after Myra, they're hiring outside law firms. And by the way, their law firms are awesome. We have dealt with them before. And Matt, our general counsel, and a lot of lawyers we worked with are like, I'll read something and I'll be like, I'm mad at Planned Parenthood. And he's like, by the way, that's very well written. Like it's all impressive. These are like real lawyers. That's expensive. There's a huge, we're talking about the turnover hurting their bottom line. Well, now they're having to pay all their lawyers to deal with all this stuff. And you can't mess around with this stuff because people like Myra Rodriguez will get $3 million and put you out of business. So you have to spend the money on the lawyers because the Jewish lady is saying that you hate Jews and the black lady is saying you hate blacks. And you just can't be like, they were mad because, we didn't save them a piece of the cookie cake, at Linda's birthday party. This is like real substantive stuff. And
this one we just talked about, it got settled. So you talk about they're selective when they go to court. They didn't fight this one in court ultimately to trial. They settled it. And there's a great quote here. The lady, Angela Brown, who sued for being denied medical leave for cervical cancer, her attorney said, there's an assumption that when you treat women with those issues, you'd be sympathetic to those issues.
Boom. That's the mic drop. So all this is going on. So they're paying the lawyers and all that. But also the other staff members, aren't they like, Angela's my friend. Mm-hmm. Like, this place sucks.
Mm-hmm. It's opening their eyes to the truth. I mean, I saw that in my former facility when I left. And my coworker who knew that she was aware that I was going through a conversion, she never said anything, and she's originally from Venezuela. So Planned Parenthood was
Of course she was.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
They were loading up on their Latinos. Or whatever.
That's why they hired her.
That's right.
Right, exactly. But she wasn't familiar with Planned Parenthood. This was just a job opportunity for her. Single mom, and they had promised that when she received word that they were going to shut down the facility after I quit, that they were going to put her in a different facility. They were going to transfer her. And they never did. And they just kicked her out to the curb as a single mom without a job.
It's brutal. It's brutal. And obviously, like, you had like a conversion.
Right.
Abby had a conversion. Myra had a conversion. They're pro-life now. But there's, that's why we count the workers who actually have a conversion. But what we don't report, and this is way more than the ones that convert, obviously, are the people that are like, look, I support abortion rights and all that. But like, I'm never working there again, and I don't support them, and I don't think anybody should go there, and blah, blah, blah.
I'm stripping the bumper sticker off.
But what's great about this, and I think this is why it makes me so happy, is that even if they think, even if they leave there thinking they still support abortion, this is always going to be their experience. And so as we, share these pro-life talking points and they start reflecting, they're going to start looking back at their time at Planned Parenthood and saying, maybe these pro-lifers are onto something.
It's a crack in the door.
Absolutely.
It's definitely a crack in the door. And this was a great. We've touched on this in the past, but I don't think we've done a dedicated, podcast on it.
There's receipts here. There's a lot of documentation of this.
There's a lot of documentation.
By the way, they're racist too. We got footnotes in our notes here in case somebody calls us out on it. But
yeah, there's a lot of footnotes.
The other thing I'd say too is as we wrap this, we're not wrapping up this podcast because these are all the examples we can find. We're wrapping up this podcast because the clock tells us it's time. This is sort of like at the end of John's gospel, where if all the things that happened that the Lord did, all the books in the world wouldn't be able to contain. There's a little bit of that with this podcast. If we
it's a snapshot.
Every allegation, we would not be able to have enough podcasts in the world to
and it
address
checks
them
out.
all.
It checks out. I mean, just based off of my own experience, I wasn't at Planned Parenthood forever. I was only there 3 years, which is 3 years too long in my opinion. But I mean, it all checks out. I could give countless examples, not necessarily just my own, but from other workers in other facilities within our affiliate who had legitimate reasons to not be there and to be upset with their work environment.
I've learned a lot from this podcast, and I would like to announce that you no longer have free parking at 40 Days for Life. Producer John, you got to start paying for parking. I'm starting to learn some of the ways that you start charging for parking.
How much less equity do we have now?
I know.
How do you quantify that? Is there a unit of measurement for equity?
You were a DEI hire. I hired you because you were a Packer fan.
Sure.
And, we didn't have any.
Can I be a DEI hire as well?
No.
You're on your merits.
No, it's on your merits.
Bummer.
Sorry. Apologies. No more free parking for you, my friend. It's unbelievable. The Massachusetts one I think is my favorite. If you have to rank these, but
what do you mean you want to get paid? We give you free parking.
Yeah, we had pizza last week. That was
really
2 years ago.
Pretty incredible.
Unbelievable. All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed this. We certainly enjoyed it. And if you have not gotten your copy of What to Say When Part 2, of course, we got to do a little book plug. Please go and you can get that on Amazon or you can get it directly from us. You'll get a signed copy if it's directly from us. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Ramona. We love working at 40 Days for Life, and I'm sure you're glad you're not at Planned Parenthood anymore, especially after reading this.
Ramona and I are starting a union, though.
Oh, good. Okay, that's the next episode. We're going to talk about the union.
We're going to get our free parking.
The union at 40 Days for Life. You're going to scrape the pro-life bumper sticker off your car. All right, please rate, review, share this podcast, and we will see you next time. God bless you.